Coming to you straight from Fremont, California, this is the Fremont Podcast, dedicated to telling the stories of the past and present of the people and places of the city of Fremont, one conversation at a time. Now, here's your host, Ricky B.
Hello, Fremont. You're listening to episode number 41 of the Fremont Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me again this week. It truly is a privilege to have you join me each and every week. This conversation that I share with you today in this episode is one that I fully anticipated would happen earlier in the podcast, but it has taken me over 40 episodes to get the owners of Devout Coffee to join me and tell me their story so that I can share it with you. This conversation happens in front of a live audience for their 10th anniversary. But before we get to that, here's a word from our sponsor.
Gary Williams here. Some friends of mine are making a difference in the community, and one of the ways they're doing that is helping to sponsor this podcast. Petrocelli Homes Realty Group is a boutique brokerage service located in downtown Niles. Jon and Jennifer Petrocelli have had the honor of helping countless buyers and sellers make effective real estate decisions to plant their roots, raise their families, expand their wealth, or simply relax and retire. So if what I've described is what you might be looking for in a realtor, I suggest getting in touch with Petrocelli Homes on Niles Boulevard in downtown Niles.
Hey, what's your name?
Mitty.
Mitty. Okay, and how long have you lived at Fremont?
Well, I've been in Fremont. I went to high school here, so...
Wow.
I've been here, I'm trying to think. I went to Fremont. I've lived in Fremont since the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
What high school did you go to?
I went to American, then I transferred to Logan.
All over the place.
Yeah, I've been all over the Bay Area, yeah.
Yeah, what part of Fremont do you live in now?
Now I'm on Eggers.
Okay, I know, right? Centerville. Yeah, that's great.
Near Washington.
Yeah, what are some of the things that you have enjoyed about Fremont over the years?
Well, the weather.
Yeah, it's very nice.
The Bay Area has some of the best weather. I actually had moved to Manteca. I was there for 2 months, and I ended up moving back to Fremont.
No way. Yeah.
So I bought a place there. I'm running back in Fremont because my kids like the high schools here.
Yeah, that's great.
And the education system's a bit different than in the valley.
Right.
So I end up coming back.
Say, what brought you into Dale today?
Dale has very good service.
Okay.
It's the service, really, because you go to like Home Depot or something, the competitors, you walk in there and there's nobody to help you.
Right.
You come into Dale, go straight to the line, which there's barely any line.
Yeah.
They'll get you someone and you're ready to go.
That's awesome. What parts did you get today? What are you working on?
Some reverse osmosis was leaking the pipe where the water's coming in from the building.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I've got a washer to try to fix that.
Wow. How many years have you been shopping at Dale?
I've been about 10 years.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
It's nice meeting you.
You too.
Have a good one.
A quick bit of news. Ohlone College President Dr. Eric Bishop resigned on Wednesday this week during their board meeting. He was a guest on the podcast not that long ago, and I wanted to wish him well. Also this week, very sad, Anthony Pabros, who was a two-time guest on the podcast, passed away. He was part owner of the Niles Candle Company as well as Balin Bikes. Our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family and friends at this time. Well, today I have the privilege of sharing with you a conversation that I had with Jon and Stevie, who are the owners of Devout Coffee in downtown Niles. Recently, Devout celebrated 10 years of developing the process of becoming what they are today. And I was able to interview them in front of a live audience. This is actually the first time that I've ever done an interview for the podcast in front of a live audience. And you'll hear some of the noise in the background, some of the live music that they had going on for the festivities. But the conversation and hearing their heart and the story behind starting Devout Coffee, behind roasting coffee and brewing it, All of those things you get to hear in this conversation, and I'm really excited to be able to share it with you. So here is my conversation with Jon and Stevie, owners of Devout Coffee. All right, I'm trying this out, make sure we're all good. You guys talk for a second?
Can you hear me, Ricky?
There you go.
Can you hear me, Ricky?
I can hear you guys.
All right.
Awesome. This is actually really exciting for me because Jon and Stevie are some of my best friends. I moved here about 8 years ago, and when I was considering moving to Fremont, I wanted to find a coffee shop that I could really enjoy, and that would be a place that I could consider my own coffee shop. And I remember coming in early 2014 and starting to bug Jon and Stevie and just coming up with a bunch of ideas and wanted to talk to them about coffee and all that. And then you start fast forwarding in the story. Jon and Stevie became very close friends and been able to do a lot together. I remember early on telling them that I really wanted to see Devout succeed as a small business, and if they ever needed help with anything, that I wanted to be available. And Jon...
And then we asked you to deliver pastries.
That's right. So one of the things I love about these guys is that they were very particular, and they only said yes to things that they were very, very sure of. And so at the time, they were only serving coffee. And then they were thinking about wanting to do pastries as well, but they only had two choices in the Bay Area of bakeries that they wanted to use. One of them was in Los Gatos, and one of them was in Emeryville, and neither one of them would deliver to Fremont. And so Jon came to me one day and was like, so we have a couple bakeries that we'd like to use, but they don't deliver here. And I was like, I'll go pick them up. I'll deliver for you. And so about 2015, I became an employee of Devout, and I would actually get up around 5:30 in the morning and drive to Emeryville every day, 7 days a week, and pick up pastries and bring them back.
You loved it.
I did love it. That's where I started listening to podcasts every morning. And part of the deal that sweetened it was I realized that in my budget, which was a very tight budget, I was spending a lot of money on coffee here. And they offered as part of the deal that I would get free coffee if I did this. So I thought, well, I'll get paid whatever they're going to pay me, but then I don't have to pay for coffee anymore. So for about 2.5 years, I delivered pastries every morning when I was not out of town. And I would get up early and go to Emeryville. Eventually, the coffee shop in Emeryville moved to Oakland. And then eventually we worked out a deal that they could deliver to San Jose. And so I would drive to San Jose and I would pick up the coffee. And then about 3 years ago, right before COVID, they talked to me, well, we've got the bakeries. They got the bakeries now to deliver here to Fremont. Would you be interested in delivering our whole bean coffee to the cafes and the stores around the Bay Area that would sell our coffee?
So you could still listen to podcasts.
Yes, exactly. So I'm still listening to podcasts. This time only one day a week. On Thursdays, I would drive around the Bay Area and drop off coffee. I'd load my car up full of all the whole bean coffee and go to all the different places. And so I'm telling you all this because Devout has become a second home for me, and I love these guys. But also, on top of all of this, especially early on when I was delivering pastries, I would come and drop the pastries off at 7, and then I would just sit in the cafe for like 2 hours and just meet all the customers that would come in the morning to get their coffee, and I would just talk with them. And I remember meeting a lot of customers that were regular Devout customers, and I just remember, I remember thinking there's a lot of people here in Fremont that have just great stories. They're just a lot of really good people, and I got to meet a lot of these people, and I thought if there was just a way I could capture some of these conversations to share with other people, I think that'd be really cool. So fast forward to earlier this year, and I started the Fremont podcast, and a lot of that came out of just sitting in Devout's dining room talking with customers and hearing their stories and hearing about the people's lives here in Fremont. So early on, I wanted episode number 1 to be with these guys. And it's taken me, today I just put out episode 38. It's taken me 38 episodes to finally get them behind a microphone.
You caught us here at the same time, finally.
That's right. Well, yeah, having them here at the same time was part of the catch. But I love these guys because they're not out in front of people. They are not out bragging about their story. I had to drag them up here to be able to hear their story. But I love being a part of what's going on here, and I'm glad that you're a part of here. So that's my big, long introduction for Jon and Stevie. And a lot of you might already know their story, which is great, but I'd love to hear it again. So I'm just gonna conduct an interview like I do with so many other people I've interviewed, and I just see where it goes from here. So Jon already talked a little bit this evening, and so he told us a little bit about his origin with coffee. But I just want to hear from you guys. Maybe Stevie, you can tell me, when did you start having an interest in roasting, brewing coffee?
Well, part of it was hanging out with Jon and our friend Archie, who goes by Brian now. But Archie got into some home roasting on a bread machine, and his coffee was terrible, but it was really interesting. So we just started trying some specialty coffee options like Blue Bottle, and actually I would say Blue Bottle was my first introduction to like an amazing cappuccino. It really blew my mind on how good coffee could actually be when I tried a cappuccino from Blue Bottle, just coffee and milk. And I think I've always loved coffee since I can remember, but I'd never had coffee like that. So that kind of sparked the fire. And from there it's just, I think, buying a bunch of different brewing methods and trying different things.
That's awesome. And Jon, did you discover the same love for coffee around the same time, or what was the beginning of your coffee story?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this earlier, but I have a very distinct moment in coffee that I remember. I was camping with our mutual friend Archie, and so we're camping, and I brought a bag of coffee from a coffee company I won't name that roasts really dark that I loved, and I drank a lot of their coffee. And he brought a coffee that was, I still remember it was an Amaro Gallo natural process Ethiopian coffee. And he brewed me a cup of coffee. He made a V60, and which was new to me too. And it was a game changer. Like, from that moment, I had tasted a coffee that had layers of flavor dynamics that I did not know coffee could even produce. Blueberry and fruit notes, things that I didn't even know coffee had in it. And that set me on a trajectory of how can we find more coffee like this? There was nothing nowhere near us. We ultimately had to roast it ourselves. Yeah. So we were driving all over the place. Our wives probably hated it, but we would drive an hour sometimes to go find a craft roaster, go sit at Blue Bottle and just try to even bug their roasters and try to pick their brains on what they were doing. We're going out to the city, and it was an endless project of trying to find good coffee. That was something we
did all the time, and if I'm honest, Jon made me pretty uncomfortable at times when he would critique every place we went to. He would give them feedback, I think, whether they wanted it or not, and he would, your coffe's over extracted, or you need to do this or that. I don't love the roast.
Or the barista should want to know that stuff.
That was, it is good, yeah. But good feedback where it was necessary too. But I remember that so often, just going into all these different places, and we would sit there and study everything they did. We'd look at the coffee shop, the atmosphere, the quality of the service, the music, just the whole environment, the coffee itself, and just think about what we hated or loved about it.
Well, and so at this point, we were roasting coffee in my garage, and we had taken this bread machine that I don't even know where we got it, the bread machine, but we took a bread machine and we'd modified it to roast, and it was Naomi's bread machine. We ripped it apart and pulled all the like temperature safety stuff out of there because who needs that? And we used a heat gun because the bread machine didn't create good enough heat, and made some terrible roasts with it. But we thought we were, learning.
Yeah, I remember one of the really early on coffees we roasted was a Guatemala. We roasted it, I think, probably way too light, and
I don't even think we finished first crack.
Yeah, it was. We both had stomach aches at the end of it.
It was so acidic, so under roasted. It was very bad.
So we had to figure out how to not do that again, and with some research and trial and error. Yeah.
With that too, though, I mean, because we had espresso machine and we were buying like 5-pound bags of coffee. If they would sell them to us, we were buying like large bags of coffee, and sometimes wasting it because it'd be like, this coffee's no good.
Yeah. So that was something we did a ton of in our early days, was buy anybody's coffee that we thought was pretty decent, and we would just run it through our espresso machine, which we had a Slayer in the garage, and that's kind of been our flagship machine ever since. It's a great machine, but we're pulling shots on a Slayer espresso machine, and we got to try everybody's different options, different roasts, and kind of find out what we actually liked before going ahead and starting our own roastery.
Yeah, so I love the fact that, one of the things, if you buy the coffee from Devout, it says on the back, or even on the shirts that they've made, it says devoted to the coffee experience. And I think that's different. What we're talking about here, you talk about starting a coffee shop. Oftentimes it's just, let's find the coffee that we like, who's roasting what we like, and let's bring it in and let's figure out a way to make it for the people that are willing to come here to the shop. These guys are committed to the coffee experience from the very, very beginning, like just choosing the green beans, where it's coming from, all the way to the time that it leaves the bar into the customer's hands. And so we hear talking, they're talking about their origin story, but they're also talking about the roaster, how to find a way to roast exactly the way that they want it. And if you notice, the two roasters that are out back here, these are the workhorses of Devout, and they've been the workhorses for the last 10 years, past the bread machine that you guys had. But the smaller roaster in the back, one of the things that I love about these roasters were not just purchased off of Amazon or some easy place just to get it, in the box and ready to go. These roasters, well, tell me about them. Like the small roaster, where'd that come from?
Yeah, so that was actually you tell the story about that.
So that small roaster out there is a 1985, 86 Probat L5. And when we got that machine, it was literally a pile of rust. It had sat in somebody's
barn. Right? Yeah.
So what had happened, it was in service somewhere, and they had a roaster fire, and a drive shaft broke off, and it was sitting in somebody's barn just rusting away. And we met somebody who knew that we had some of what Nick was talking about earlier, that just a drive to make things and to fix things and to make it work. And so knew that we had the aptitude even to take this pile of rust and turn it into something that would work. And we...
Yeah, he knew the value in that machine too, and he had restored lots of roasters in the past, but he actually basically did a phone interview with us to make sure we were capable of restoring the roaster, and he decided that we'd be able to do it.
We essentially paid scrap metal price for it, and but it was missing. It didn't have a drive shaft. It was missing electrical components. A lot wasn't there. There was big parts of it that were gone, and so between mostly Stevie and I, we stripped the whole thing down. We had parts machined. We rewired the whole thing. We plumbed it into the gas, and we've been roasting coffee on it for a long time.
How long did it take for you to restore that unit?
It was in my garage for a year, and I would I was really busy at the time, so I would put maybe like 2 hours a week into it. And that's how bad it was. It needed a lot of work. Plus, I mean, I didn't know anything about electrical at the time. And actually, I always tell people that being a coffee shop owner and roaster has actually taught me how to be a lot more than that. It's taught me how to do, more building projects, like engineering type of stuff, electrical, gas components, all that stuff.
You might know this about Jon and Stevie, but if you and about Devout, but if you come into the shop, I made the comment that the roasters did not just come off of Amazon or in the box, but if you look at the whole shop, the counters, the way that everything is laid out, everything was designed by them, built by them, handmade. And even in here, like as this is slowly becoming a part of a new space for Devout and the new Devout van that's coming soon over here. As you look at all of this is handcrafted, hand designed. And then the second roaster that is now being, how long have you been using the new roaster, Stevie?
Maybe 6 months. Yeah, I mean that project has been around for a long time. When we purchased that roaster, there was no airflow to the cooling tray. It was just misused. Abused.
Yeah, it was completely clogged from coffee that was over roasted. So there was no way that the coffee would actually cool. And that's a really important part of roasting. So that was it was actually probably the hardest part of restoring that roaster was trying to keep the original cooling tray.
And that's a fun roaster. It's unique because it's an Italian-made roaster that originally was wood-fired. So it actually has a firebox in it that originally you would put oak logs in there and you would heat that roaster with wood. And so it's been converted fully over to gas, and it functions very similar to our small roaster up front now. But
yeah, so we put on new technology on it. We put temperature probes on it, motor controllers, VFD, they're frequency drives, and a new afterburner, and we did all kinds of stuff to it. So it's a lot more technically advanced, I guess, than what the way we got it.
And yet still, it's very much a hands-on machine. It doesn't roast the coffee for you.
Right, and we did that intentionally because we could have fully automated that roaster if we wanted to, but we want to keep the hands-on aspect. I mean, that's why we use that roaster and set it up the way we did. And that's also why we still use Slayer espresso machines, because we want the hands-on, the craft that actually comes from the operator instead of the machine.
That's awesome. There's two qualities that I admire about Jon and Stevie. Well, there's a lot more than that, but there's two ones that stand out with this whole story, and that is, number one, if they don't know how to do something, that doesn't stop them. Like they're gonna figure it out. They're gonna find a way to not just figure out how to do it okay, but they're gonna find a way to do it the best. They're going to be the best at what they do. And I think that's an amazing part of the DNA of Devout Coffee. The second thing is that they are committed. I remember the first time I walked into Devout, which was early 2014, and they weren't at the bar, but I asked a couple of the baristas, I think it was Anthony and Jordan were at the bar, and I asked, where'd the name Devout come from? And they said, well, the owners, they're devoted to everything in their life. They want to do everything in their life well, and they're committed to that. And I just remember thinking that was just really, really remarkable. And so, over the years, going from not knowing really anything about coffee, or very, very little about coffee, to being experts in the East Bay, experts in this area, experts in roasting and brewing, all these things. Being committed to it is just very, very remarkable. I'm curious, maybe you guys can talk a little bit about, have you guys ever thought that you'd quit? Has there been a time where you've been in the middle?
Yes.
Has there been a time in this process where you've just said, we can't do this anymore, it's been a good run, we're going to go back to just roasting at home? have you ever wanted to quit?
Many times. I mean, we joke. I mean, the entrepreneurship in general is like this roller coaster. Owning your small business, doing all that is a roller coaster journey of 1 week, life is good, we're on top of the world, we're going to conquer the coffee industry. The next week, this sucks, let's quit, let's go back to doing...
It's emotionally draining.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I feel like it's always a new challenge. It's always a when you think you've learned enough to just go, you'll run into something else, and I think that's okay with us because I think we both like learning new stuff.
I joke with them. I walk around. I get asked all the time if I'm one of the owners or if I'm the owner of Devout, just because I walk around acting like I own the place. But I tell them, I was like, no, I just act like I'm the owner. I just get all the benefits of being what an owner would be, but without all the stress involved. So but I can't imagine, like, and I've been able to, I've been privy to conversations with these guys to be able to hear some of the stresses and some of the hard points in the journey, and I just admire their effort and their drive to move forward. I remember, and I think this is important to note as well. They're not greedy, because even in COVID, there was a number of coffee shops that Devout sold their whole beans to. And one of the things during COVID, a lot of the coffee shops that didn't roast their own beans, they had it the hardest because the service industry just went away for a while. And it really was difficult for coffee shops that weren't roasters as well. But one of the things I know that Devout did, and I know we've got Raul back here who works with Red Rocks. And one of the things that Devout, they were committed and devoted to the other coffee shops as well. And they said, hey, we're going to cut back our costs to you. If you can pay what it costs us to roast, and we'll cut that back for you so that you can, keep moving forward with what you're doing. And they're not just committed to the roasting experience, the experience here in the cafe, but they're committed to the partnerships that they've made throughout the Bay Area. And I think that speaks really, really highly for them, because it hasn't always been easy for them as well. Well, I hope you're enjoying the conversation that I'm having with the owners of Devout Coffee, Jon and Stevie. We'll have the rest of that conversation for you in just a second. But before we do that, I want to tell you about Dale Hardware. Dale Hardware has been helping people make Fremont their home for over 65 years, and they are still doing that today. If you are working on a project around the house, if you're trying to finish up some maintenance, Dale Hardware is the place that has the materials you need and the customer service that will help you get the job done. They also have regular events for the family that you will not want to miss out on. So check out Dale Hardware on Thornton Avenue. Now back to our conversation. What are some of the things that when you look back at your story here with Devout, what are some of the milestones for you that have been really, really critical, really important to kind of keep you moving forward?
I feel like, I was just talking to Nick Truzelli, who was just up here talking, and it's stories like his and other stories. I remember different experiences, different customers that we've connected with, and the way that coffee and Devout specifically has affected their journey, that those sort of things keep me in it, keep me going, knowing that, and not just that, but also the relationships that are developed through this. My closest friends that I have now were developed through this cafe. You're testament to that. And I would not be where I'm at now if it wasn't for conversations that I had here. So I think those are the kinds of things that coffee's enduring. Coffee develops relationships. Coffee develops and fosters creative ideas. Coffee, I think that's why for us it's about enjoy the simple. Take a step back and allow coffee to fuel whatever you're doing.
Do you have anything to add to that, Stephen?
I agree. Definitely agree with that. But yeah, I think coffee is a very simple idea. I mean, it's just it's a beverage you drink, but I think just having, something that you're doing that you just want to be excellent in. And I'm going to rewind a little bit and go back to, where you're kind of talking about being devoted and stuff. And I think something about that I think about a lot with Jon and I is we, I think, and our wives, is we're very much like we stick to our guns about we decided early on what we want to be, and I think having a mission and a vision for what you want to be, for whatever your business is, or whatever you're going to go after, I think that's super important to have that in place, because you're always gonna fall back on that and go, am I doing what I said I was going to do? And if you're not, then you're kind of lost and you're making wild decisions. So like you cave into what everybody else wants instead of what you want. And so one thing that Jon and I would say a lot is we want to do what we love. And if we're not doing what we love anymore, then we're just doing a job. So I think that's kind of what has kept that flame burning for Devout is sticking to something that we're proud of, that me and Jon critique each other really hard on coffee too. So like I think we trust each other's palates more than anybody else as far as like tasting coffee and stuff. We've actually been having some conversations about that, how it's sad not actually being able to sample new coffees together all the time because we live further apart right now, but we want to keep that that vision and mission of what we're doing, and that's creating a great coffee experience, a great environment to enjoy the coffee experience, and ultimately just doing coffee with excellence. And so we want that to kind of shine and be obvious in our business. So, yeah.
I think we talk about mission drift, and I've watched many people in different ventures, different pursuits, and you end up in mission drift, and 5 years into the project, you're doing something different than what you set out to do. And so very early on, like we are here to change the way you think about coffee. We're here to do what we do, and that's what we do. And so if it's pastries, we're going to find pastries that best complement the coffee so that you can enjoy the coffee experience. If it's the way that we build the tables or that we set up the cafe or the patio, we're not going to do it halfway. We want to do it to where you can best enjoy the coffee so that it fits the mission. And if we find ourselves drifting from that into other ventures, that's when we got to rein each other in.
I feel like that's what people have come on board with us in is kind of seeing that it's been super recognizable. I would say even more so in the beginning of like this is kind of who we want to be, and we didn't have a bunch of capital to throw at starting a business. We actually started with like literally nothing. We had vacation check to throw down on this building to get into Devout, which was first and last month's rent.
And we threw a party to raise money. It was like
in my backyard. Yeah. Yeah. So somebody just brought that up earlier. They're like, I was at that backyard party. Yeah. I'm like, what? Wow. And that was funny because we planned that the night before, right? Or
it was super like we'd signed the lease and we had to give a check. And we had your vacation check, and we needed to raise more money. And it was like, let's throw a party. Let's see if some friends want to come and help support this.
We thought like maybe 15 people would show up. We had like 100 people in my backyard. It was weird, but
we raised more than enough money and
got
into the space.
Yeah, that's cool. You guys, and I know there's so many more. There was so many people here tonight. You're all a big part of the story as well. And I think that's one of the things that is important to keep in mind is that, Jon and Stevie do what they do. They've also been fortunate enough to have people come around them that believed in the story, believed in the mission as well, have followed it. And like Nick, Nick came in, he was talking earlier, and he came in and was a part of the story for a little while, more specifically part of the story. And then he's moved on to something else, but that all contributes to the story. And you as customers, you as devoted customers, are part of the story as well. And so as things continue to move forward, I love the fact, I do the Fremont podcast when I talk to people that I'm interviewing. I always talk to them and say, what do you hope that people, what change or what do you hope to be known for in 5 or 10 years from now? What do you hope that you can do to help the community be a better community in 5 or 10 years from now? And I think that Devout, in the 10 years that they've been here, have already made a difference in our community. They've already put down roots and established themselves, and sometimes in the most meager times. But if you guys were to say, as we kind of wrap this up, if you guys were to say, what would you hope to do to help this Fremont community in the next 5 or 10 years? What would you like Devout to be remembered for, to be known for? What would you like Devout to accomplish in the next 5 or 10 years? What might that be?
Well, I tell my wife this a lot, but like I feel like I always want like our surrounding area to just step it up. And so that's just like I think there's a ton of room for more of the craft culture, more just people being willing to step out and try something rather than relying on something that's secure. You have to take risks if you want to do something effective. And I feel like we're seeing some of that just in Niles, and it's been fun to see. But yeah, just in this whole community. Yeah.
Everything to add to that, Jon?
Yeah, I just think, I think I said this earlier, but like we hope to create a space and create a product that helps fuel creativity and progress and challenging ideas, innovations, like all those things. Like we really hope that our coffee helps move things forward, that people come up with creative ideas and chase their passion and do things that they never thought possible. And hopefully if it's a couple young guys buying a roaster and rebuilding it, if that helps inspire that, or if it's drinking a cup of coffee, I think that's it for us.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, and I don't know how many of you have ever heard of the Fremont podcast before today, but I would say what I've done and what I started was a big part in due to Devout, my time at Devout, and just meeting our community. This being a place where the community really cared about, and they really cared about the community. And it just really was the birthing place for the Fremont podcast. So I'm really grateful for that as well. Thank you guys for joining me finally.
Thanks, Ricky.
I finally got you guys up here. Yeah. So thank you guys.
You said it wouldn't be like any pressure, and then you asked me to come up in front of everybody.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. Yeah.
Cheers. You've been listening to the Fremont Podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever it is that you listen so you don't miss an episode. And if you're so inclined, leave a kind review so that others can find the podcast. To stay connected with us, you can find links to our social media and other content at thefremontpodcast.com. This episode was hosted, edited, and produced by Ricky B. Music provided through Soundstripe.com. I'm Gary Williams. Join us next week on the Fremont Podcast.
Muggins Media.